So friends, basically at one point or the other we have once received gifts, and we have enjoyed how good it is to receive a gift and how we should not pay back the gift that we've been given. But in most cases, people, they celebrate and they receive gifts, sometimes maybe because of their achievements. Sometimes maybe they are just celebrating their anniversaries, and sometimes it's just for appreciation. So gifts comes in different ways, and we have once received gift and we have once given people some gifts. It's in this sense that the Corinthian church in those days, they understood the principle of receiving gifts and giving gifts. But in most cases, it was that when you receive a gift, then you are going to be seen to be lower compared to the one that gives you that gift. So what was there was, for you to redeem your status, you have to make sure that at least you pay back. And when you are paying back, you need to give more than what you have received so that your status can be honored and be superior. Now, when we come to our passage this afternoon, we realize that Paul starts with a phrase that says, now concerning. So this phrase, wherever it appears in this book of Corinthians, we realize that it is a way in which Paul is trying to answer the question that was written in the letter. So we see that in chapter 7, verses 1, Paul uses the same way of using the term now concerning. So now this phrase is introducing us to the issue at hand. And the issue we are dealing with here, it is the issue of collections. So in those olden times, or in the time of the Corinthians, the word that Paul uses here for collection actually tells us that it was something that was an irregular tax, or it was a contribution that one could give freely. And on the other hand, again, it was something that could be corrected for religious purposes. So now, having understood that actually this word, when Paul is getting the understanding or trying to explain what this correction could mean to them, the Apostle Paul in verses 3 changes. He does not call it as a correction, but rather he calls it a gift. And when we go to 2 Corinthians chapter 8 verses 4 and chapter 9 verses 1, we realize actually Paul changes the way he calls this gift. He calls it to be a service. So in this service that Apostle Paul is bringing to the people, or he's demanding or commanding the people to give, he understands that it's something that does not just lie as a collection only on the part of the people, but it should be viewed as a gift to the ones that are receiving it, and it is a service to show their Christianity life in the church. So this is why now Paul, actually it is a tendency, it seems it's something that was happening in the churches that Paul had planted. That's why we see he goes further by saying, as I had directed the churches of Galatia. So we see in chapter 2 of Galatians verses 1 to 10 that actually Paul, he had gone to Jerusalem, and when he went to Jerusalem to take the gifts, he was being reminded the needs that the people who were poor wanted at that point, and in which it was in the mind of the Apostle Paul. So friends, when we come to the issue of giving, we realize that actually when we are giving out, or when we give to people, according to Paul, we are not supposed to think about receiving back in response to what we have given. Neither should it be a way to elevate our status, But our giving should be seen as a way of the evidence of love among the Christians. So this now brings me to the ways, or when should it be given and how should it be given. And this is now what Apostle Paul does in verses 2. He comes and he says, on the first day of the week. Friends, you would wonder, why is not Paul not using the seventh day of the week? But we realize that there is an important thing about the first day of the week. And that importance is that the first day of the week was regarded to be the day of the Lord, the day in which Jesus Christ resurrected. And we cannot talk of the resurrection of Jesus Christ without us knowing that he gave his life. So Jesus gave his life for the church. And when the church are to give their gifts, they need to remember that there is one who has first given his life for them. And this is the reason why now Paul begins to expound, to explain more. He needs to lay a way in which each person of the church actually should be involved in this activity. Now the question is, how should everyone be involved? Because we may have poor people, we may have richer people, and we have got people of wealth in this context who think that if they have money, they can control everything. So Paul tells them that each one is to put aside something in his store. Meaning these people, they do not need to struggle by getting more than enough to give to the churches, but they need to be keeping bit by bit every week. They need to be serving, giving, so that by the time when Paul comes to correct it, it will not be a show of the richer people. So friends, Paul uses this strategy so that every person, the poor and the rich, can have a way in which they can participate in this gift and in this service, in this evidence of love. Would we not now go to verses 3 and hear what Paul is now saying? He says, when I alive. Already that one, it is showing us that actually Paul wants to go to Corinth. But when we go to chapter 4, verses 19 and chapter 11, verses 34, we realize actually Paul is eager. He really wants to go to Corinth because he tells them that I am coming there soon. Why is he going? Firstly, he's going to give some directions. He's going to sort out their problems that cannot be sorted in the letter that he has written. Then the other thing we see is that the issue of the correction. But furthermore, one thing that we learn from Paul here is that when he tells them that he is coming, he goes further to give a role that the church should play. And that role is that the church should choose among themselves people who are going to represent them in taking this gift to Jerusalem or Judea. But in the same manner, we see how Paul is humble, because Paul knew certain people who were good readers according to him. He knew certain people who were serving in this church. But he does not rush and choose people for himself. He entrusts that leadership of choosing to the church. So already it shows that Paul is confident in the believers in Corinth, because he gives them a way so that they should choose people who are going to represent for them when they go to Jerusalem. So he does not just end from there, but in showing appreciation, he even says he is going to write a letter that they are going to carry with, so that when they reach in Jerusalem, basically these people, they should have an introductory letter that is going to show an introduction to those people. Remember, these are Gentiles, most of them, and they are going into a Jewish place to take a gift. It is possible that they can be mistaken. But now what Paul does, if he is to write a letter, and why should it be Paul writing the letter, not just sending them away? It is a way to show that actually Paul is one of the apostles who was chosen to preach to the Gentiles. So the bishop of the Gentiles write an introductory letter. Think of it today, if the bishop of riches say, write an introductory letter for you to go and serve in a certain place. Automatically, even the minister who get it, they will be eager to pay attention and to respect you. So if Paul is to recommend these people, it means actually these men, they are going to be recognized as Christians and fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. Friends, we see that the word that Paul uses here, which says approve or accredited, this word, it is used in the sense of self-examination, someone who examines himself, someone who weighs his stands. And this is one thing that actually Paul is trying to stretch forth. As we come to verses number 4, we see that Paul starts his words by a conditional clause, by using the word if it is advisable. If it is advisable. Paul does not impose himself in choosing for the church, but he rather comes to the church, respect the leadership, respect them despite that he is the one actually who fathered them through the gospel. He preached to them. But when he comes to them, he gives them an option to choose if it is advisable that these trusted believers should accompany him. And I was thinking through when I reached here, I was like, why should Paul say these people should accompany him instead of Paul accompanying them? We realize that in Galatians chapter 2, verses 10, it is a mandatory for Paul, or it is something he was reminded that he should never forget the believers who were poor in that church. So, in which it was upon the heart of Paul to take the gifts to that church. And this is one of the things that shows us that actually this agenda which Paul had driven in churches of them being able to help out to other believers was to be achieved. And Paul here tells them that if it is advisable, they can accompany him. Friends, when we go now to 2 Corinthians chapter 1 verses 15 to 16, we realize that now it seems certain that Paul, he is actually going to be accompanied with these people in taking this gift. Brothers and sisters, it's a time that we need now to think through and reflect over our lives. When we give gifts to people, we need to remember one thing, that the gifts that we are giving, they are not to pay back, but they are gifts that are given in the service and in the love of the Lord Jesus Christ, knowing that on his day when he shall come, all our works are going to be judged, and everything we do is going to reflect. As Jesus tells us that whatsoever you did even to them that are least, you did it to me. Then furthermore, we are being given a charge by Apostle Paul that we should be found worthy. We should examine ourselves. We should be approved. We should be entrusted with our churches. We all came here, and our churches have been in support of us. They wrote recommendations for us to be here. Are we able to represent them well as we live at GWC? Are we able to reflect our lives in light of the gospel? That should be the question we should ask. But furthermore, we are not there for our churches. We are there for Christ crucified, who laid his life for you and me. May the good Lord bless you.